My wife passed away. I was left the deed to a condemned storage facility outside of Amarillo, while my daughter kept the $4.2 million Lakehouse in Austin. The day the lawyer read the will, my daughter looked at me like I'd just tracked mud across her carpet. She told me I had 30 days to clear out my things and figure out my life. I was 67 years old. I had nowhere to go, so I drove 4 hours west to a property I had never once laid eyes on. And when I finally cut through that rusted padlock and rolled up the heavy corrugated door, I stood there in the dust and the heat, and I could not move. Not because of what I expected to see, because of what I never could have imagined. Hey everyone, welcome. Before we get into today's story, I'd really appreciate it if you take a second to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. These stories travel farther than I ever expect. Now, one thing I want to be upfront about, this story includes some fictional elements for narrative purposes. But the heart of it, the feelings, the choices, the love, and the betrayal, that's as real as anything I know. Let's see what George discovered out there in the Texas Panhandle. The conference table at Harmon & Associates feels longer than it actually is. I know this because I've sat at it before, years ago, when my wife Eleanor was finalizing the paperwork for her consulting firm. Back then, the room smelled like coffee and possibility. Today, it smells like recycled air and something I can't name, something final. Patricia Harmon sits at the head of the table. She's in her mid-60s, gray hair cut close, reading glasses low on her nose. To my right sits my daughter Nora, and beside her, her husband Greg. They are both leaning forward in that particular way people do when they've already decided how they want the meeting to end. It has been 11 days since Eleanor died. 11 days of casserole dishes on the porch and voicemail messages I haven't returned. And Greg quietly rearranging things in my garage just to help, he said. 11 days of Nora handling every arrangement, which mostly meant signing things and making decisions in a tone that didn't leave much room for discussion. Patricia clears her throat. Thank you both for coming. We'll proceed with the reading of Eleanor Jean Calvert's last will and testament, executed September 14th, 2022. Nora straightens. Greg sets his phone face down on the table. To my daughter, Nora Ann Calvert Briggs. Patricia reads carefully, evenly. I leave the primary family residence located at 4400 Lakeshore Drive, Austin, Texas. Current appraised value $4,200,000. She pauses. Additionally, the primary brokerage account held at Fidelity Investments, current value $5.8 million. And the retirement accounts through Calvert Consulting Group, current combined value $2.1 million. Greg exhales slowly through his nose. Nora's jaw tightens, but not in surprise, in satisfaction. Patricia turns a page. To my husband, George Allen Calvert. My chest tightens. I leave the commercial property located at 14900 Ranch Road, 385, Oldham County, Texas. County assessment value $85,000. The property includes a main storage structure, an access road, and approximately 12 acres of surrounding land. The room goes quiet. Nora blinks once. Then she says, very slowly, a storage unit. Patricia keeps her expression neutral. The property includes a primary structure classified as a commercial storage facility. It was purchased by Eleanor Calvert in 1998 and has remained in her name since. Nora turns to look at me. Dad, you're getting a storage unit. Nora, she left you a shed. She almost laughs. The sound is strange. In Oldham County. Do you even know where that is? I do. I've driven through it. Flat land, sky in every direction. One gas station on the highway. I never knew Eleanor owned anything out there. There's also this. Patricia slides an envelope across the table. Cream-colored. Eleanor's handwriting on the front. George. Open at the property. You'll understand when you're there. My hands aren't steady when I pick it up. Greg leans forward. Is there any possibility the will is contestable? On grounds of diminished, no. Patricia's voice is quiet, but there is nothing soft about it. Eleanor was evaluated by 2 independent physicians in the final months of her life. Cognitive function was fully intact. The estate plan was reviewed by 3 attorneys. It is ironclad. Greg sits back. Nora looks at me again. Dad, You're not actually going to accept this. She wanted me to have it. She wanted you to have a building worth less than a used car. Nora shakes her head. You're 67. What are you going to do? Live in a storage unit? I haven't seen it yet. She picks up her purse. Greg and I need to talk to our attorney. This doesn't make sense. She stands. At the door she pauses and turns back. And just so you know, the house in Austin, we're moving in. We need the space. You have 30 days to get your things out. The door closes behind them. Patricia and I sit in silence. I'm sorry, I say. She removes her glasses and sets them on the table. Don't be. I've seen worse. She reaches into her briefcase and places a rusted padlock key in front of me. The property is about 4 hours west. Address is in the deed packet. Eleanor wanted you to go there before you do anything else. I pick up the key. It's old, heavy. The kind of key that belongs to a lock nobody makes anymore. One more thing, Patricia says. Eleanor told me you might have questions later. If that happens, call me. Anytime. That evening I drive back to the house. Our house. Nora's house now, I suppose. The house where Eleanor and I lived for 23 years, where we ate Sunday breakfast on the back porch and argued about what to watch on television and slow danced in the kitchen. One New Year's Eve when we thought Nora was asleep, but she wasn't, and she teased us about it for years. That house. I sit in the driveway for a while. Eleanor's last words to me, 3 days before the end, were quiet. She had to pull me close to say them. Trust the property, George. Everything you need is already there. I've made sure of it. I didn't ask what she meant. She was exhausted. I didn't want to add to her weight. Now I think I should have asked. The next morning I'm in my home office packing the last of my books when Nora knocks twice and walks in without waiting. Greg is behind her. Between them is a man I've never seen before. Late 40s, navy suit, briefcase, the practiced calm of someone who gets paid to deliver bad news gently. Dad, this is Warren Howell. He helps families navigate transition planning. Warren sets his briefcase on my desk and opens it. Mr. Minceprem may evenum be cordy. Calvert, your daughter has some concerns about your well-being as you move into this next phase. The document on top reads, Durable Power of Attorney, Irrevocable. I read the relevance section. The agent shall have full authority over all bank accounts, real and personal property, including any commercial holdings in Oldham County, Texas, and all healthcare decisions effective immediately upon execution. Irrevocable, I say. Warren nods. It ensures continuity. I turn to Nora. You want control of the storage property. I want to make sure you're taken care of. She sits across from me. Dad, there's a property tax situation on that building. Past due assessments, something like $14,000. If you can't pay it, the county puts it up for auction. And if I sign this, then Greg and I handle it. Everything. You don't have to worry about any of it. I look at Greg. He's studying the corner of the room with great interest. And if I don't sign? Warren clasps his hands together. Texas statute allows for an emergency guardianship petition when an individual is deemed unable to manage their own financial affairs. Given your age, recent loss, and current housing situation, a family court judge could grant temporary conservatorship within 72 hours. I look at my daughter, the girl who used to fall asleep in the car on long drives and wake up confused and reach for my hand without saying anything. You'd file that against me. I'm trying to help you, she says, and her voice sounds like she almost believes it. I close the folder. I slide it across the desk toward Warren. Get out of my house. Nora's jaw tightens. At the door, she turns back. You have 28 days, Dad. Think about it. 4 days later, I'm carrying the box to my car when I notice the recycling bin at the curb is overflowing. A manila folder has slipped out and landed on the driveway. The tab reads, Dad, Options. Nora's handwriting. Inside are brochures. Sunrise Pines Senior Living, Lubbock, Texas. Photographs of a low beige building. Dining hall with plastic tray tables. Residents watching a wall-mounted television. A contract is clipped behind the brochures. Resident name, George Allen Calvert. Room type, shared occupancy. Building C monthly rate, $3,100. Move-in date, November 15th. I look at the contract date at the bottom, August 3rd. Eleanor died, August 19th. Nora had signed me up for a shared room in a Lubbock nursing facility 2 weeks before her mother was gone. I photograph every page. I put the folder in the trunk under a moving blanket. Then I sit in my car for a long time looking at the street where I've lived for 23 years. The drive out to Oldham County takes just over 4 hours. Amarillo fades in the rearview mirror. Then the suburbs. Then everything. The Texas Panhandle in October is flat land and wide sky, and the particular kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. I passed through Canyon, then through a town so small it doesn't seem to have a name on the sign. Just a post office and a grain elevator and a feed store with a hand-painted banner, WE, appreciate your business. Ranch Road 385 takes me south off the highway. The land out here is scrub grass and red dirt, barbed wire fences running straight in both directions as far as I can see. I find the address from the deed. A gravel turnoff marked with a reflector post, no sign, nothing to indicate anything of value. The access road is about a quarter-mile long. At the end of it, set back from the road with no neighbors in sight, is the building. It's larger than I expected. A long metal structure, corrugated steel walls painted a deep rust brown that may have once been red. One roll-up door on the front, padlocked. A smaller entry door on the side. The roof is solid. The foundation looks clean. The surrounding 12 acres are flat and dry, dotted with mesquite and juniper. I step out. Wind moves through the grass, nothing else. I think about what Nora said. A storage unit. A shed in Oldham County. Worthless. I think about Eleanor. I try the padlock key. It turns. I roll up the door. Inside, the air is cool and still. The structure is climate controlled. I notice the vents along the upper wall before I notice anything else. The lights come on automatically when I step in. Fluorescent panels running the length of the ceiling, all of them working. The space is clean. Not dusty, not abandoned. Along the left wall are steel shelving units holding labeled banker's boxes. Along the right wall, a workbench with a locked drawer set. At the far end, a second locked door. And in the center of the room, on a folding table, 2 envelopes, both in Eleanor's handwriting. One says, "Read first." The other says, "Read second." At home, after you've looked around, I pick up the first envelope. George, the key on the shelving unit hook opens the back room. Go there first. What you're looking for is in the fireproof cabinet in the corner. Combination is our wedding date. Forward, back, forward. I find the hook. I find the back room. The fireproof cabinet is gray, 4 drawers. The kind used for documents that can't be replaced. I dial the combination. June 14th. Forward to 6, back to 14, forward to 88. The cabinet opens. Inside are 4 expandable folders, each one labeled Patent Portfolio, Active, Nora, Evidence, Hargreaves Group, Conspiracy, Trust and Estate Documents. My hands are shaking when I lift the first one. I don't sleep much that night. I set up a cot in the main room of the storage facility. The climate control hums. Outside, the wind comes and goes. I read until 2 in the morning. Eleanor's consulting firm, Calvert Consulting Group, had spent 15 years developing proprietary process optimization software for mid-size manufacturers. I knew that much. I knew she was good at it. I retired from my position as a high school civics teacher in 2019, and by then Eleanor's company had more clients than she could manage alone. I was proud of her. I didn't need to understand the technical side to understand she had built something real. What I didn't know was what the patent portfolio folder contained. 11 active patents. The flagship one, U.S. Patent 10,1887-423, covered a core algorithm in a manufacturing efficiency process that Eleanor had developed in 2017. According to the licensing summary in the folder, that single patent had been generating royalty income of between $380,000 and $520,000 annually since 2020, paid quarterly by 3 separate licensees. There was a handwritten sticky note attached to the front page. George, this property is the registered business address for Calvert IP Holdings, LLC. The patents are held by the LLC. The LLC is titled in your name. It has been since January 2022. I moved it before I got sick. Nora doesn't know. Greg doesn't know. Greg doesn't know. Neither does their attorney. I read it again. Then I open the second folder. Eleanor's handwriting in the evidence folder was careful and deliberate. She had documented everything in chronological order, the way a very precise person organizes something they intend to be used later. The summary at the front read, Nora and Greg Briggs, in coordination with Marcus Hargreaves of Hargreaves Group Capital, have been systematically attempting to acquire control of Calvert IP Holdings since March 2022. Below that, a timeline. March 2022, Greg Briggs contacts Hargreaves Group independently, provides internal financial projections from Calvert Consulting without authorization. This constitutes theft of proprietary business information. May 2022, Marcus Hargreaves approaches Nora directly, proposes acquiring Calvert IP Holdings through a probate maneuver following Eleanor's anticipated death. Nora agrees to cooperate. July 2022, wire transfer, $75,000. Hargreaves Group LLC to Nora Calvert Briggs' personal account. Memo, consulting retainer, September 2022. Greg Briggs submits a fraudulent valuation report to Nora's estate attorney understating the IP portfolio value by approximately $4.1 million. Report prepared by a firm Hargreaves Group controls. October 2022. Eleanor discovers the valuation report among documents Nora forwarded, by mistake. Begins documenting. Attached behind the timeline were printed email chains, screenshots, bank transfer records, a signed letter of intent between Nora and Hargreaves Group dated 4 months before Eleanor died, outlining the acquisition structure. Eleanor had highlighted 3 lines and written next to them. She signed this while I was in treatment. I had to set the folder down. My daughter and agreed to help a private equity firm take control of Eleanor's life's work in exchange for money and a position while Eleanor was undergoing chemotherapy. She had provided proprietary documents. She had accepted payment. She had planned it all out and then sat across from me at hospital dinners talking about how much she loved her mother. I sat on the floor of that storage facility in Oldham County, Texas, and I held the folder in my lap, and for a long time I didn't say anything to anyone. Outside, the wind moved through the mesquite grass. I thought about Eleanor spending the last year of her life building this, quietly. While I was driving her to appointments and reading to her at night, she had been building walls I didn't know I needed. Around 11 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed. A text from Nora. Checked with our attorney. You have 26 days remaining on the notice. Let me know if you want to revisit Warren's proposal. I didn't reply. 40 minutes later, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't answer. Something made me pick up and mute my own line immediately. It was Greg. He didn't know I was there. I know, he was saying. He thinks it's just a storage building. He doesn't know about the LLC or the patents. His voice was low and clipped. He's a retired teacher, Marcus. He taught high school civics for 30 years. He doesn't know what he's sitting on. A pause. Someone else speaking, but I couldn't make out the words. The guardianship petition is ready. Our attorney says we can file Monday if he doesn't sign the POA. Once he's declared unable to manage complex financial decisions, Nora becomes conservator. After that, we transfer the LLC and take it to the acquisition table. I hit record on my phone's voice memo app. He's not going to figure it out in time, Greg continued. Patricia Harmon doesn't know about the patents either. She handled the estate, not the business side. He'll think the whole thing is worth $85,000 and sign it over to get the taxes paid. A laugh. Short. Confident. 2 weeks, Marcus. If he doesn't sign the POA, we file Monday and we're done by Friday. The call ended. I saved the recording. Backed it up to the cloud. Labeled it October. Greg call. Then I lay back on the cot and stared at the ceiling of the storage facility that wasn't really a storage facility. That was in fact the registered business address of a company that owned 11 patents generating over $400,000 a year. Eleanor had known. She had seen it coming 18 months out. And she had moved the entire LLC into my name before she told anyone she was sick. I closed my eyes. Outside, the wind rattled the corrugated wall. 2 weeks. The next morning, I called Patricia. She answered on the second ring. I told her about the recording, about the folders, about Nora's signature on Hargreaves' letter of intent dated 4 months before Eleanor's death. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Eleanor told me you call. She walked me through everything. The LLC had been fully retitled in my name in January 2022. The patents were protected inside it. No conservatorship order, no power of attorney, and no probate proceeding could reach them. Eleanor had also embedded what Patricia called an ethics clause in the trust governing the estate. If Nora contested the will, filed for guardianship under fraudulent pretenses, or entered into any transaction with Hargreaves Group or Marcus Hargreaves personally, she would forfeit her entire inheritance. The Lakehouse, the brokerage account, the retire inheritance, the Lakehouse, the brokerage account, the retirement funds, all of it. And the evidence Eleanor had compiled would transfer automatically to the Texas Attorney General's office and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office Enforcement Division. $12 million gone. And a federal investigation to follow. Eleanor had not just protected me. She had built a cage around anyone who tried to take what was mine and made the cage trigger the moment they touched the bars. There's one more thing, Patricia said. The property taxes, I know. $14,000. Closer to $16 with penalties, but Eleanor funded a reserve account specifically for that. It's been sitting in a trust sub-account since March. I filed an extension with the Oldham County tax assessor this morning. You now have until April 30th to settle it without penalty. I stood by the workbench in the storage facility and looked at the shelving units and the labeled boxes in the locked back room with a fireproof cabinet. How long did she plan this? I asked. Patricia was quiet for a moment. She called me for the first time in October 2021, came into the office in November. We worked on it for 14 months. 14 months. 14 months. While she was sick. While I was trying to take care of her. She didn't want you worried, Patricia said. She wanted you protected. I drove back to Austin the next morning. I had 19 days left on Nora's notice. I wasn't afraid. I spent the first week quietly. I moved the rest of my things to a rented room above a hardware store on the east side. The owner, a man named Pete, was 71 and widowed, and we ate breakfast together most mornings at a diner 2 blocks over. He didn't ask questions. I liked that about him. On the 8th day, Greg came to pick up the last of a piece of furniture I'd agreed to leave for them. He stood in the doorway of the empty spare room and looked at me with the expression of a man who has already spent his winnings. You should really think about signing the POA, he said. The tax deadline isn't going away. I have the recording, I said. He went very still. From last week, I said. You and Marcus Hargreaves. The guardianship plan. The LLC transfer. I recorded the whole call. Greg's face changed, not all at once. In stages. First confusion, then calculation, then something he was trying hard to keep from becoming fear. He left without saying anything else. That afternoon I called Patricia and told her to prepare the warning. The warning letter went out the next morning, addressed to Nora and to the offices of Hargreaves Group Capital. Patricia had it drafted, notarized, and filed with the Travis County Probate Court by noon. It was simple. If Nora filed any legal challenge to Eleanor's will or trust, if she pursued a guardianship petition under false pretenses, if she completed or continued any transaction with Marcus Hargreaves or any entity he controlled, the ethics clause triggered immediately. She would forfeit every dollar Eleanor had left her. The evidence would go to the AG. The IP theft and securities fraud components would go to federal prosecutors. She had 72 hours to respond. She didn't wait that long. Her attorney called Patricia 18 hours later. Nora was withdrawing all petitions and accepting the terms of the estate. She would keep what Eleanor left her, the house, the accounts, and she would have no further involvement with Calvert IP Holdings or George Allen Calvert. Patricia called me at 7 in the evening. I was sitting on Pete's front porch with a cup of coffee. It's done, she said. I looked down the street. The light was the particular orange of a Texas October evening, the kind of light that makes everything look a little more significant than it probably is. Okay, I said. I got an email from Nora an hour later. Dad, my attorney has advised me to withdraw all actions and accept the estate terms as written. I'm keeping the house and the accounts. You keep the property. I'm asking you not to contact me. I need space. Nora. No apology. No acknowledgement of the Sunrise Pines brochures. Of the letter of intent, of the $75,000 she'd taken from a man who wanted to steal her mother's life's work. Just the clean language of a business transaction being closed. I typed a reply. Nora, you signed a contract with Marcus Hargreaves 4 months before your mother died. You took money from him. You provided him with proprietary documents that belonged to her company. You filed paperwork to put me in a shared room in Lubbock while she was still alive. I have all of it. I'm choosing not to send it to the AG today. That can change. Do not contact me again. Do not test me on this. George Calvert. I sent it. Then, I blocked her number. Pete had come out to the porch while I was typing. He didn't ask what was happening. He just handed me another cup of coffee and sat in the other chair. We watched the street get dark. In November, I signed the licensing agreements. Patricia had connected me with an IP attorney in Dallas. A woman named Joan Ferris, 50s. Direct, no patience for anything that didn't need to be complicated. She reviewed Eleanor's existing licensing arrangements and spent 2 weeks renegotiating the terms with 2 of the 3 licensees. The royalty rates improved. She also identified 4 potential new licensing candidates that Eleanor had flagged in a document inside the patent portfolio folder but hadn't had time to pursue. By December, Calvert IP Holdings was generating a projected annual royalty income of between $580,000 and $718,000. I sat with that number for a long time. I had spent 31 years teaching civics in public schools. I cared about it. I was good at it. I retired with a pension that paid $2,400 a month. That was enough, and I knew how to live on it. And I never once wished I'd done something different. But Eleanor had seen something in that flat red dirt property in Oldham County that no one else had. She had seen a future. She had put it there quietly, patiently, and she had protected it with everything she had. All I had to do was show up and be the person she believed I was. I drove out to the storage facility in December and stood in the main room for a while. I'd had a desk installed near the workbench, a proper chair, a small electric kettle, the kind of things you bring in when you're not just visiting a place anymore. The shelving units looked different now that I knew what the banker's boxes contained. Eleanor's entire documentation of the business, her notes, her development logs, her correspondence with the patent attorneys, her projections for each technology. The story of a woman who had built something from nothing and made sure it would outlast her. I put my hand on one of the boxes, her handwriting on the label, permanent marker, neat and exact. "Thank you," I said, to the clean, quiet air of that building in the Texas Panhandle. "For doing all of this. For believing I could hold it." Marcus Hargreaves was indicted in February. Federal charges: securities fraud, wire fraud, and tortious interference with a business interest. The Texas AG filed a parallel civil action. The evidence Eleanor had compiled was, as Patricia put it, almost insultingly complete. He had been operating the same scheme with 3 other companies before Eleanor caught him. The FBI had been looking for exactly what was in those folders for 16 months. Eleanor, Patricia told me, had been in contact with an agent in the FBI's Economic Crimes Division since December 2021. She had met with them 6 times. She had submitted documentation at every meeting. She had kept doing it through treatment, through the months when she couldn't drive herself and I took her everywhere without knowing where we were really going. I sat with that for a long time, too. She was protecting me, and I thought I was taking care of her. Maybe we were both right. Greg cooperated with federal investigators in exchange for reduced charges. He lost his financial advisory license. The merger consulting firm he built with 2 partners dissolved within a month of the indictment. Nora had sold the Lakehouse by April. The name Hargreaves attached to a fraud case had made the deal she'd been counting on collapse, and the carrying costs on the property were more than she'd expected. Last I heard through Patricia, she was renting an apartment in Denver, working in property management. I don't feel sorry for her. I've tried to examine that honestly, the way Eleanor would have wanted me to. I don't feel sorry. I feel something more like the particular sadness of watching a person choose the worst version of themselves and then have to live in it. In the spring, I hired a local contractor to build a proper office addition onto the storage facility. Insulated walls, real windows, a small bathroom, a second room for the document archive. Pete's nephew did the work. Good man. He and his crew drove out from Amarillo 4 days a week for 6 weeks. I brought lunch from the diner in Canyon most days. The property doesn't look the same anymore. There's a path now through the 12 acres, gravel, with native grass on either side that I've been letting grow back in. Eleanor had flagged the land in her notes too. She had been in contact with the Texas A&M Agronomy Extension Office about a native prairie restoration pilot project. I called them in March. They were ready to proceed. They'd been waiting, they said, for the landowner to be available. In June, I established the Eleanor Jean Calvert Foundation. Joan Ferris helped structure it. Seed funding of $500,000 from the first year's royalties. 3 focus areas. Patent education for independent inventors who can't afford IP attorneys. small business legal support for entrepreneurs in rural West Texas, and STEM scholarships for first-generation college students in the Texas Panhandle. Amarillo doesn't have a lot of resources for that last group. I know. I taught some of those kids. The first scholarship ceremony was held at a community center in Canyon in September. 42 students. Each one received $4,000. First-generation college students, most of them heading into engineering, computer science, agriculture science, education. I stood at the podium and I thought about Eleanor in her home office. The door closed, building the LLC documentation while I watched the news in the other room. I thought about her sitting across from an FBI agent in an Austin coffee shop while I thought she was at a consultation with her accountant. She had carried all of that. And she had done it so I wouldn't have to. My wife believed, I told those 42 students, that the most important things you build in your life are the ones people can see. They're the foundations underneath. The work that nobody notices until the moment it matters. A girl in the third row was crying. She was maybe 18. She had that look of someone who has been holding the lot for a long time and has just set some of it down. After the ceremony, she came and found me. Her name was Priya. She was going to study electrical engineering at Texas Tech in the spring. She told me her mother had been sick for 2 years and they'd had to move twice, and she'd worked nights at a grocery store to help with rent. And she had applied for 17 scholarships, and this was the first one she'd gotten. She said thank you the way people say it when they mean something more than thank you. I thought about Eleanor planting this. All of it. Knowing she wouldn't be here to see it. I told Priya to go build something that lasts. I'm 69 now. I wake up every morning at the storage facility. I've stopped calling it that, but old habits hold, and I make coffee and walk the 12 acres before the heat comes in. The native grasses are growing back along the western edge. There are scissor-tailed flycatchers out there most mornings, which I didn't know before and now look forward to. The patents continue to generate income. Joan Ferris found 2 of the 4 licensing candidates Eleanor flagged. New agreements signed in April. The foundation has now supported 63 students and funded legal representation for 11 rural small businesses. Pete drove out from Austin to visit in July. We sat in the new office and drank bad coffee, and he told me about his late wife, who had been an elementary school teacher and had also, it turned out, quietly handled every financial decision in their household for 30 years without Pete fully realizing it until she was gone. Some women, Pete said, just know how to arrange things so the people they love land safe. I think about Eleanor every day. Not always with grief anymore. Sometimes with something that feels more like gratitude. Not the surface kind, but the deep kind. The kind that comes from understanding what someone actually did for you. She saw what was coming. She didn't panic. She built. I found a note in the bottom drawer of the fireproof cabinet 6 months after I first opened it. I don't know how I missed it the first time. It was a half sheet of paper, folded once, written in the blue pen she always used for personal things. George, if you're reading this, you figured it out. I knew you would. You always underestimate yourself. That was the only thing about you I ever wanted to change. You are steadier than you know and kinder than anyone deserves, and I have loved you for 31 years without a single day of doubt. Take care of the grasses. Let Priya's generation surprise you. And if Nora ever finds her way back to being the person she used to be, leave the door open a crack. Just a crack. You get to decide. I love you. I always have. E. I put the note back in the bottom drawer. I close the cabinet. I walk outside and stand in the West Texas morning. The grasses move. The flycatchers are out early. I have a foundation board meeting next week. Priya sent me an email last month with her first semester grades. Straight A's. She asked if she could volunteer with the foundation over winter break. I wrote back, yes. We need people like you. Eleanor built this. All I had to do was show up. And for the rest of the time I intend to make sure it was worth the building. If this story moved you the way Eleanor's story moves me, I'd love to know. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. And tell me this, if you discovered something hidden that someone left for you out of love, what would you do with it? Share your thoughts. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one. And before you go, a quick note. Some elements of this story have been shaped for narrative purposes, but the truths inside it, about love, betrayal, protection, and what we owe the people who build things for us, those are as real as I know how to make them. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now go take care of something that matters. I've thought a lot about what actually happened out there in Oldham County. Not the legal part, not the patents or the royalties or Marcus Hargreaves sitting in a federal courtroom. The human part. The part that keeps me up sometimes. Not from grief anymore, but from trying to understand it clearly. Nora didn't become who she became overnight. That's the thing I've had to sit with. Greg didn't just one day decide to betray a dying woman's life's work for a commission and a title. These things build. A small compromise here, a justification there, a choice to look at money instead of a person, and then another choice and another. By the time Nora signed her name to that letter of intent while Eleanor was in chemotherapy, she had been making those small choices for years. She had practiced. What looked like a single act of betrayal was really 100 smaller ones that nobody, including me, had noticed or named. That's what I mean when I say the outcome was never really about the patents. It was about the fact that Eleanor paid attention when the rest of us weren't. She saw what was forming, and instead of confronting it or collapsing under it, she got quiet and she got to work. That is a kind of intelligence I don't have a clean word for. It's not just smart. It's the particular combination of clear eyes and steady hands that lets a person build something solid under impossible conditions. Eleanor was sick. She was frightened. I know she was, even if she never showed it to me, and she used every bit of energy that wasn't going into surviving to make sure I would land somewhere safe. I think about what that cost her. I think about the meetings with the FBI agent she never told me about, the late nights with Patricia reviewing documents while I thought she was resting. She carried that alone because she didn't want the weight landing on me. Some people might call that a lack of trust. I don't see it that way. I see it as the highest form of care, deciding that the person you love has enough to carry already, and quietly handling the rest yourself. What I've tried to take from all of it is this. The choices you make when you think no one is watching are the ones that define everything. Nora thought she was being practical. Greg thought he was being strategic. Marcus Hargreaves had probably convinced himself he was just doing business, and every one of them ended up exactly where those choices led. Nora in a Denver apartment trying to rebuild a reputation, Greg without a license or a firm, Hargreaves counting days in federal custody, not because someone punished them, because the logic of what they chose played out. That's all. Cause and effect, patient and exact. Eleanor chose differently. She chose to protect instead of accumulate, to document instead of confront, to build instead of react. And the logic of loose choices played out too. Priya is at Texas Tech studying electrical engineering. 63 students have funding they didn't have before. 11 small businesses in rural West Texas have legal representation they couldn't afford. That's what Eleanor's choices produced. I'm 69 years old. I have more time behind me than ahead. And what I know now, standing in that office addition on 12 acres in the Texas Panhandle, is that the only things worth building are the ones that keep working after you're gone. Eleanor understood that. She built it. She handed it to me. All I had to do was show up and be steady enough to hold it. She believed I could. I'm still trying to make sure she was right.